would say in his letter, "Show me your faith apart from actions, and I, for my part, will show you my faith in the way I act." My hope is that you grow in faith and continue deepening yourself in our Vincentian identity of being evangelizers of the poor and in serving them through this contemporary method of systemic change. Sometimes, in our attempt to serve the poor and bring about systemic change, the social and government structures can be a big challenge and at times stumbling block. We are forced to swim against the current sometimes to achieve our goals. I encourage you to be bold and courageous in meeting the challenges and serving the poor in the contemporary way. Let the conviction that we are called to be agents of transformation in our society in a constructive way motivate us to continually serve and evangelize the poor. With affectionate regard and good wishes, yours fraternally in St. Vincent, Father Gregory Gay, CM, Superior General.
Thank you, Father Girardi. It's been a long time since I experienced a welcome in a group as warm and as genuine and as heartfelt as we did last night. It is my hope that we can continue these days in the spirit of that welcome and hospitality. Also from snatches of conversations which I've had with many people in this room, I concluded that this is an extraordinary group of very interesting people, all of whom have a shared commitment to the service of people who are forced to live in poverty. And we all see our presence here to explore systemic change as a means of assisting people to change the situations in which they live so that their lives can have some sustainability. And that's just a great thing. But it works against the task that I have today. I would just love to be able to talk and have conversations, but I'm charged today with making presentations begin on time. I'm to try to make the breaks end on time so that we can return for the next sessions. In this task, I feel totally helpless. I am totally dependent on you to return to the hall when the time for the breaks are over. Now, this morning, Father Bob Maloney will talk to us a little bit about the background and the concept of systemic change. Father Maloney had the vision for a commission for systemic change from the very beginning. The vision of systemic change has evolved over time. And there's no one better equipped to speak to us about the commission itself, how it came to the present moment, and what we understand by the concept of systemic change. After Father Maloney's presentation, we'll begin where we always begin, with some experience that points to systemic change. And that presentation will be given by Jim Clappy. in the form of a story which is called The Perfect Storm. And The Perfect Storm is a story that Jim knows personally and in great detail. And then after those two presentations, Sister Ellen Flynn will lead us in a process where we can unpack and understand a little bit more deeply what we've heard in those two presentations. So for now, Father Maloney.
I can't tell you how thrilled we are to be here with you today. I think I speak for all the members of the Commission in expressing gratitude for the wonderfully warm welcome that you've given us. I've been to India now 4 or 5 times, and it's always a special experience. You have a long history of Christianity with different rites and deep faith. You also have a contemplative culture. And here especially, we sense that you're deeply dedicated to the service of the poor. Many, many years ago, I used to teach about Gandhi and about nonviolence, and so I love to come and breathe the air of Gandhi and his spirit here too. But my job today is to speak a little bit about systemic change. You've been overly generous in things you've said about me, because the idea of systemic change obviously comes from others. And also the same thing about the Vincentian family. The idea of the Vincentian family came from St. Vincent, who established, as you know, in 1617, lay groups in the service of the poor. In 1625, a group of priests and brothers in the service of the poor. And in 1633, a group of sisters in the service of the poor. And so the family originates with him and Louise de Marillac and Frederick Ozanam and many of the founders of their distinctive groups. And so today we thank God and we thank them for the wonderful family spirit that we share in. Now, I'd like to talk with you first this morning a little bit about the work of the Commission. Let's see if this works. So I'll give you a little background about the Commission. In 2005, Father Greg Gay named a Commission for Promoting Systemic Change. Can you hear okay? Yes. He named a Commission for Promoting Systemic Change. He gave it this mandate to help bring about systemic change through the labors of those serving among the oppressed poor. So that's through us. And that's what we're going to be focusing on during this workshop. Here are the original members of the Commission, whom you've all seen already. There we are. So there were 7 members of the Commission originally with a translator. So Father Joe Foley, who's right here. Joe, as you heard yesterday, is the representative of the Congregation of the Mission at the United Nations in New York. Joe, how long have you been doing that?
12 years.
12 years. He's been 12 years at the United Nations. So he has the opportunity to express the view of the Vincentian family on various crucial issues, and then also to hear the views of lots of other people throughout the world in regard to the poor. He'll talk more about that in these days. Secondly, Mrs. Patricia Nava. Patricia's right over there in the corner. You've seen her in these days. This is the front row, so Patricia is right here. Patricia was the international president of AIC, formerly the Ladies of Charity. She's from Mexico. She's a married woman, a mother, a grandmother, and very, very proud of her grandchildren. Rosa Maria Casas is our translator. She's not here at this meeting because we don't need translation. Sister Ellen Flynn. Ellen is here in the front row. As you know, she was the chief executive of the Passage, and you'll hear more about that in these days. The Passage is a wonderful center right in the middle of London for helping rehabilitate homeless people. That's me up in the top here. Next to me is Reverend Mr. Gene Smith. Gene is a married man, also with children and grandchildren. He emails his wife every evening to tell him he's in good health here in India, and she emails back. They've been married how many years?
49. They've
been married for 49 years, and they're still madly in love with one another. It's wonderful to see when they're together. We kid Gene about that all the time. Noberto Carcellar. Noberto has an extraordinary project in the Philippines, which he will tell you about. So he works with the Federation of the Homeless People of the Philippines, and now it has spread to all the Asia-Pacific region. And then Pedro Opeka. You'll hear from Pedro this morning, actually, and you'll see a video of his work at Kamasoa, Good Friends in Madagascar. It's one of the most striking systemic change projects that I've ever seen. So those are the original members of the commission. Now, you may have noticed that we have other members at this meeting. So this is the first meeting in which a transition is taking place. So some of the members will be leaving the commission, and new members are here today. So beginning at this meeting, we have Terry Anthony right here in the first row. Terry is therefore a new member of the commission, and she works with DePaul International, which you'll hear about in these days. It's a relatively new member of the Vincentian family, which has grown extraordinarily rapidly, working with homeless people, first in London, and secondly in Ireland, and later in Slovakia, then in the Ukraine, and now in the United States. And in the United States, they have a very ambitious project of beginning a new place every year for 5 years. In fact, the first new place is in the city. It just happens to be in the city where I live, in Philadelphia. And Mr. Jim Flaherty, whom I've known for years myself. Jim is a great friend, and we've worked together many years ago in Panama as missionaries together. Jim is here with his wife. You probably saw her yesterday. She came up on the stage yesterday. And Jim represents the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Beginning during the coming year will be other people. Giuseppe Turati, who just read Father Greg's message. Giuseppe, as you know, is the Secretary General of the Congregation of the Mission. Giuseppe will take over my role as the co-coordinator of the Commission in February 2014. So a year from now. So he's here to see what happens at these meetings and to get to know everybody. So we welcome you, Giuseppe.
Thank you.
Juan Pablo Jacome Solarte. Juan Pablo is not here. He'll be coming to our next meeting and will join it. And he represents JMV, the Vincentian Marian Youth Groups. Misael Donizetti Poggioli from Brazil. And Misael represents both the Congregation of the Mission and the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. He's an extraordinary man. We're happy to have all of these new members taking part. But the happiness of greeting new members also brings about the sadness that some of our members will be leaving us. So there'll also be two other members, a daughter of charity and somebody from AIC who are to be named. So there's Kerry. There's Jim. And there's Giselle. Those are the three new members who are with us here today. So welcome to you all. Unfortunately, we have to say farewell to Gene Smith. And Gene has been with us for 7 years on the commission. I have to say this. All of us on the commission say that it has been an extraordinary experience for us personally. This is our 15th meeting, and we love getting together. The group has gelled remarkably, and I can say myself that it's been one of the best experiences in my life. The group is creative, and we've really become very good friends with one another. So we're going to miss Jean. We're going to miss Norberto. We're going to miss Ella, too. So all three of you, thank you very much for your wonderful service. Now, Pedro informed us last night that he may not be able to come to our next meeting either. And if that happens, then this will also be his last meeting. So we may lose 4 members of the commission between now and our next meeting. So I just want to thank all of you who are members of the commission, and all of you who will be members of the commission, all of those who are leaving the commission, for your wonderful work. So, Father Greg formed the commission in 2005. We meet roughly twice a year, and he gave us these goals. First, to study all existing materials about systemic change. Now, believe it or not, in 2005, if you Googled systemic change, you would have found very few things. I did it many times. You found a few things connected with education. Very few. If you Google systemic change today, you get millions of hits. Millions. And if you Google it in English or Spanish or French, you just get multiple hits. So systemic change has become, in the last 7 years, a focus of many organizations throughout the world, not just the Vincentian family. Secondly, to discuss our own involvement in systemic change. So the original members were all involved in some type of systemic change project. And you'll hear about that. I'll explain a little bit in a few minutes. You'll hear about those in these days. Third, to formulate a series of effective strategies that will subsequently be shared with the Vincentian family throughout the world. We'll reflect on all of these strategies, there are 20, in these days. And then finally, to propose how those strategies can be disseminated throughout the world to the Vincentian family. So those were the goals that we were given. Now, what did we do? How did we go about achieving those goals? This was our method. And the method is very important here. So this is how we began. In 2005, we had our first meeting on the roof of the General Curia of the Vincentians in Rome. The picture that I showed you before is the original group on the roof of the General Curia. At the beginning of the process, every member told his or her story. So we sat around a large table, and for 1 day and a half, each person told his or her story. We listened attentively. Secondly, we wanted to identify strategies within those stories that helped bring about systemic change. So notice this. This was not a theoretical study. This was a study involving real stories of real people who had been successful in bringing about systemic change. So after listening for a day and a half, I gave the group a little homework. And I said, let's each of us tonight, we've been listening for a day and a half, write down the 5 strategies made them successful systemic change projects. So all of us went home, all of us did our homework, and we came in the next day. There were 7 of us by 5, and so we had 35 strategies. But very quickly, we saw that we had repeated the same strategies in different people, and so we were able to reduce them to 20. And so we'll be reflecting in these days on 20 strategies. We quickly saw the importance of self-sustaining programs so that the poor would be active participants from the beginning to the end. This is, if there's anything I want to say today that's important about strategies, all of us agree that the most important strategy in successful systemic change projects is that the poor themselves are involved from the beginning to the end in designing, implementing, evaluating, adjusting the project. Because if they're not involved, they won't buy into the project. It won't be theirs, and therefore it will not be self-sustaining. Other people like us may want to do it, but for it to be self-sustaining, people living in poverty themselves must own the project, they must become the leaders in the project, and they must be actively involved in carrying it out. Now, when you listen to Pedro later on, you'll see how important this is in Akamasoa, his project. We also emphasize the spirituality that lies behind systemic change projects. So, this is not simply a sociological exercise. We're not simply efficient NGOs or organization. We're members of a family that has a deep spirituality. Every branch in the family has some distinctive characteristics in their own spirituality. But as a family, we share a number of common characteristics. One was in the gospel yesterday. We have a distinctive focus on Christ as the evangelizer and the servant of the poor. That's our vision of Christ. Secondly, we want to serve the poor in simplicity, in humility, so that they know that we're their brothers and sisters, and with a charity that is practical, concrete. St. Vincent would say, affective, warm, loving, and effective. And all of the branches of the family have that in common. And so we really share a very rich spirituality, and we hope that it is always communicated in the works that we perform. Now, what have we done so far? So, first, we've written a book. Some of you may have the book, or some of you may have read it, but you're all going to receive it at this workshop. Later on, you're going to receive it not as a physical book, but as a folder in the next thing that I'm going to mention. So this is the book, Seeds of Hope, Stories of Systemic Change. The book is organized just the way I mentioned before. It tells stories. And then reflecting on the stories, it develops the strategies. So it treats all 20 strategies. Secondly, we designed a toolkit. Now the toolkit, this is interesting. The toolkit, we really did think of a toolkit, a box. A box like a mechanic might have who fixes cars, or a box like somebody might have who's learning knitting or crocheting, or a box that a painter might have in which his paints and brushes were in it. We thought of a box. But little by little, by little, we developed, we developed a memory stick. Who doesn't have this either? There we go. So our toolkit is a memory stick, sometimes with 2 gigabytes of information, films, PowerPoint presentations. The book will be on here in English. We have these things in many different languages. We have the book in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, a number of other languages. We have the toolkit in a number of languages too. So it became this. Now, we discovered that this is much better than the box. Because if we gave you the box, you'd receive a little booklet, but you couldn't change it. And the great gift of the memory stick is that you can enculturate it. So, if you receive a PowerPoint presentation in which there are pictures, for example, a picture in New York, where I was born, may be very interesting to the audience there, but it has nothing to do with India. Nothing. So, you can change pictures. And a picture that's great in India is no good in Brazil. And so if a Brazilian gets it, he or she can put in pictures of Brazil. And so we encourage, you're going to receive not a memory stick, but a DVD which has the same materials. So we encourage you to change what you find on the memory stick. Because it's not enculturated to India. It comes from our experiences in other places. And so you'll see it has a lot of things in it on a lot of other places. But we encourage you to put into it pictures from India, expressions from India, anything that you think will be appropriate to India. People like a memory stick when they get it. They find that it's a very helpful thing to have. The FAMVIN website. Do you all know the FAMVIN website? It's FAMVIN.org, O-R-G. The FAMVIN website has been very good to us as a commission. And so we've offered to Father John Freund, who's the administrator of the website, we've offered to him many series. So, for example, we did a series on the 20 strategies. And so if you look back into FAMVIN in its histories, you can find all 20 strategies with a long explanation or a story about that strategy. We did a series of news stories once, and we're about to begin another series of news stories of systemic change projects. So we've gotten very involved with the FAMVIN website. We do startup grants. A foundation very generously offered us $100,000 a year to award to people who are beginning systemic change projects. There's a whole process by which people can apply for those projects, but they send them in, and then once a year the commission meets and evaluates the projects. And then it usually makes 3 or 4 awards totaling $100,000 to help people begin those projects. Yesterday we had, the last 2 days we had a regular meeting of the commission, and we were examining the reports on 3 of those projects. And we were all struck by how well written the reports were. And we were also encouraged, and one of the members said, Patricia actually, that without the grant,